You're infected! No, no. Back up!
Don't think about
I
it!
said back up!
Just because she coughed twice, this unlucky woman was blasted into a sieve by a shotgun. It's not that the shooter was heartless, but the woman was infected with a coronavirus. If the infection spread, her entire family would be at risk. This is the latest disaster movie of 2024, Lazarus. A terrifying coronavirus descends upon Earth, infecting billions in just 2.5 years. To survive, the remaining survivors begin a deadly battle royale. In the near future of 2025, another influenza virus emerges on Earth, spreading rapidly across the globe. Those infected first experience coughing and fever, then start bleeding heavily. It takes only 7 days from infection to death, and within 3 months, 80% of humanity is infected. However, worse than the virus is human nature, as survivors start killing each other for supplies. To avoid the virus, Lee takes her 2 newborn daughters and hides deep in the mountains, building a small cabin and living a blissful, isolated life. In the blink of an eye, 15 years pass, and the 2 daughters grow into adults, having never experienced the outside world. The daughters are curious, but Lee always uses the danger outside as an excuse to prevent them from leaving the valley. The family lives happily until one day, an unexpected event occurs. That day, as usual, Lee returns from gathering supplies. After completing disinfection procedures, Lee brings the supplies into the house. As she turns around, she spots a woman in the nearby forest. The woman is disheveled and miserable. She doesn't follow Lee into the house but crouches in the bushes, observing carefully. After confirming there are no men in the house, the woman sneaks into the backyard, but as she tries to climb the wall, she finds Lee staring at her from the door. Lee had already noticed the intruder. While moving the supplies, she had her daughters hide and silently grabbed a gun. Seeing her cover blown, the woman starts to plead. She takes out a photo, claiming to be a wanderer just seeking some food. Her young child hasn't eaten for 3 days. Feeling pity for the poor woman, Lee softens. She took out 2 cans to try to get rid of the woman, but the woman suddenly scratched her body.
You're infected! No, no. Back up!
Don't think about
I
it!
said back up!
And the unlucky woman collapsed in the doorway. Lee, dressed in protective gear, quickly disposes of the woman's body. Then, she thoroughly disinfects the ground where the woman had been. It's no wonder Lee is so cautious. She has seen firsthand how terrifying the virus can be. However, Lee is unaware that others have already set their sights on the valley. The next morning, Maeve, as usual, goes into the mountains to look for food. Passing through a valley, she discovers a tent with a man inside. Seeing the stranger, Maeve feels both happy and scared. She's glad to finally see another person, but she's also afraid the man might be infected. Conflicted, she returns to the cabin and finds her sister. The 2 head to the valley to check on the man, but after waiting for half a day, there's no movement from the tent. Maeve approaches to investigate, only to find the tent empty. As the sisters think the man has left, they hear a noise behind them.
See where you are! See where you are!
The man had gone to gather firewood. Seeing Maeve holding a knife, the man becomes very nervous. Maeve demands the man to strip down to check for infection. Hearing the word infection, the man is puzzled but complies. His body shows no signs of infection, only a wound. He explains he got injured while climbing the mountain. Seeing the man isn't infected, Maeve doesn't trouble him further but asks him to leave quickly. There are many wild animals in the mountains. Maeve and Imogen then leave the valley. However, their mindset changes after encountering the man. They crave contact with others, and Imogen even worries the man might be cold. Imogen's concern stirs Maeve too. At night, Maeve tries to cautiously tell their mother about the man in the back mountain, but before she can speak, their mother scolds them for not bringing back wild vegetables. Lee assumes her daughters were playing. Seeing her mother so stern, Maeve doesn't dare mention the man, but at night, the sisters worry about him. They quietly head to the back mountain while Lee sleeps. However, when the 2 girls arrived at the tent, they found the man unconscious. The sisters decided to save the man in order not to let the man who had so easily appeared die, and they quietly brought him back to the basement. Maeve fetched alcohol and gauze to treat the man's wounds. Just as they were bandaging him, Lee, hearing the commotion, came to the storeroom. Seeing her daughters had brought back a man, Lee was surprised. She wanted to throw the man out, but her daughters resisted, even arguing with Lee. Hearing Maeve's words, Lee realized that the presence of this man was causing division in the family. In the end, Lee compromised. agreeing to let the man stay until he recovered but insisted he must leave afterward. Seeing their mother relent, the daughters agreed, but they didn't know this was just a stalling tactic by Lee. Once her daughters were asleep, Lee quietly went to the basement. She took out a knife, intending to kill the man silently, but he suddenly woke up. Lee suspected the man had ulterior motives for coming to the valley, but the man explained he was just lost. He offered to leave immediately if Lee was worried. Seeing he wasn't lying, Lee said nothing more, just instructed him to leave once he was healed. Lee didn't realize this man would disrupt their peaceful life. Under the sisters' care, the man recovered quickly. In their conversations, Imogen learned the man's name was Owen, a wanderer. Maeve developed feelings for Owen but was too shy to express them. While Maeve was conflicted, an unexpected event occurred. One evening, Maeve heard playful sounds from the storeroom. She discovered Imogen and Owen flirting. Seeing Imogen laughing with Owen, Maeve was furious. In retaliation, Maeve went to the chicken coop and vented her anger on a chicken they had raised for 2.5 years. Snapping its neck, Maeve brought the dead chicken to Imogen, accusing her of killing it. Imogen was bewildered by Maeve's accusation and tried to speak, but Maeve didn't give her a chance. The sisters fought, creating chaos. Hearing the commotion, Lee just wanted to enter the house, but there was a strange noise at the door. Lee turned around and saw that it was a motorbike team. She hastily pulled her 2 daughters together and told a few of them to hide quickly. Lee picked up a shotgun and hid in a cabinet, ready to fight back if discovered. Before long, the gang arrived at the cabin. One kicked open the old wooden door, and his henchmen rushed in. Finding no one inside, they began looting the place. The canned goods Lee had painstakingly gathered were taken. After ransacking the cabin, the gang left. After they were gone, Lee stormed to find Owen. She had overheard the gang members talking they were looking for Owen. Seeing Lee's anger, Imogen stood in front of Owen and revealed her relationship with him to Lee. Lee was furious but also felt helpless. Under pressure, Owen had to explain. The gang was a criminal group he had a run-in with days ago. He injured one of them, managed to escape but got shot. He then fled into the mountains, leading to the current situation. Hearing Owen's story, Lee was resigned. In this apocalyptic world, conflicts were inevitable, and they had to deal with it. To prevent the gang's return, Lee decided to get weapons. She drove down the mountain, unaware that Maeve had hidden in the cargo hold. Maeve initially thought her mother was going to gather supplies in a deserted area. To her shock, Lee walked into a Walmart. Maeve was stunned to see people without protective gear, laughing and talking. This wasn't the apocalyptic world Lee had described. Just as Maeve was shocked by this, yesterday's robbers came to shop at the supermarket. Seeing Maeve's attire, they laughed, recognizing her.
Staying in that cabin with you.
I don't know what you're talking about.
The truth was the virus had been controlled years ago. Society had returned to normal, and Lee, in her protective gear, had become a laughingstock in town. Feeling humiliated, Maeve returned to the car just as Lee finished shopping. Maeve angrily confronted her mother for lying. With the truth exposed, Lee reluctantly explained, although humans had developed a vaccine, the virus still existed. Without absolute safety, Lee didn't dare bring her daughters out. Hearing Lee's explanation is still a little too much for Maeve to take in, and just as she's wrestling with whether or not to tell Imogen about it, Maeve sees Imogen waiting at the door. Looking at Imogen, who is laughing and joking with Owen, Maeve doesn't end up telling the truth. After dinner, Lee approached Owen, asking him to keep the secret. In return, she agreed to let Imogen marry him. Although Owen didn't understand why Lee deceived Imogen, he agreed. As the family was about to rest, the gang returned. Fortunately, Lee had bought weapons in advance. She led the family to hide in the bushes, launching a surprise attack when the gang was off guard. Though Lee initiated the attack, she was shot by the gang leader during the firefight. As soon as they saw that things were getting out of hand, the rest of the group scattered. Even as she lay dying, Lee didn't reveal the truth. In the days that followed, Maeve took over for Lee. Imogen, still unaware the apocalypse had ended, became pregnant with Owen's child. Just as Maeve thought they could continue deceiving Imogen, her clever sister sensed something was wrong.
Thank you, Lazarus.
Thank you, Lazarus.
This is the latest disaster movie of 2024, Lazarus. Overall, The movie is decent, but the ending feels lackluster. If Lee's selfishness were portrayed more deeply, the movie's reputation might improve.